Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and well, what do we have here? Assad's concerns have been vindicated again. This is breaking news, folks. Of course, we don't support the Syrian government here at WAM, or any government for that matter, but the global military-industrial complex has been showing itself to be more and more coercive by the day as we witness false flags across the board and destabilization of governments and political groups throughout the world. Recently, CIA documents from 1983 and 1986 have exposed the psychological games the CIA has used to create an empire in the Middle East. These documents show the CIA mapping out a complete destabilization of Syria decades ago under Bashar al-Assad's father, Hafez Assad. One document titled Bringing Real Muscle to Bear in Syria, written by CIA officer Graham Fuller, says, Syria at present has a hammerlock on U.S. interests both in Lebanon and in the Gulf. Through closure of Iraq's pipeline, thereby threatening Iraqi internationalization of the Iran-Iraq war. The U.S. should consider sharply escalating the pressures against Assad Sr., though covertly orchestrating simultaneous military threats against Syria from three border states hostile to Syria: Iraq, Israel, and Turkey. So while not explicitly saying they wish to see false flags in Syria, it certainly stands out the level of infiltration and destabilization spoken of, and involving conflicts in other countries that the United States was involved in creating. It's the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat. But that's nowhere near the end of it. The 1986 document titled Syria Scenarios of Dramatic Political Change goes more in depth with plans to completely destabilize the country and drive forces against each other, as well as create at least the perception of government violence against people, whether directly or through actually stoking the flames by pushing the government to attack its own people. Here's a piece of a subsection titled Communal Violence Escalates into Civil War. And I quote, Sunni dissidence has been minimal since Assad crushed the Muslim Brotherhood in the early 1980s, but deep-seated tensions remain, keeping alive the potential for minor incidents to grow into major flare-ups of communal violence. For example, disgruntlement over price hikes, altercations between Sunni citizens and police forces, or anger at privileges accorded to Alawis at the expense of Sunnis could foster small-scale protests. Excessive government force in quelling such disturbances might be seen by Sunnis as evidence of a government vendetta against all Sunnis, precipitating even larger protests by other Sunni groups. Sunni merchants and artisans probably would launch protests similar to those staged in previous years, for example, by closing down businesses and the bazaars in Hama or Aleppo and possibly Damascus. Sunni students would stage campus demonstrations, and Sunni professional associations would organize stoppages. Mistaking the new protests as a resurgence of the Muslim Brotherhood, the government would step up its use of force and launch violent attacks on a broad spectrum of Sunni community leaders, as well as those engaged in the protests. Regime efforts to restore order would founder if government violence against protesters inspired broad-based communal violence against Alawis and Sunnis. A general campaign of Alawi violence against Sunnis might push even moderate Sunnis to join the opposition. Remnants of the Muslim Brotherhood, some returning from exile in Iraq, could provide a core of leadership for the movement. Although the regime has the resources to crush such a venture, we believe brutal attacks on Sunni civilians might prompt large numbers of Sunni officers and conscripts to desert or to stage mutinies in support of dissidents, and Iraq might supply them with sufficient weapons to launch a civil war. Indicators of developing scenario: strikes and demonstrations demanding government action to end discrimination against Sunnis become frequent. Security personnel force businesses to reopen and confiscate the inventories of many. The government conducts the indiscriminate roundups of Sunni leaders. Syrian leaders accuse Iraq and the Muslim Brotherhood of fomenting unrest. Violent indicators include bombings of Sunni social gatherings take place. Sunnis retaliate with similar violence against Alawis. Government attacks on suspected Sunni dissidents increase, sometimes razing whole blocks in Sunni residential areas. Sunni troops refuse to fire on demonstrators. Some units mutiny and join growing Sunni opposition movements. So something that stands out to me there is a notation of causing violence and mutinies in support of dissident involving the Muslim Brotherhood, which the US later armed and funded, and talking about Iraq, who they had already armed and funded at this point, providing weapons to launch a civil war. There's also talk about attacking the markets, which would cause unrest, creating political and class divide, and attacks on public events and gatherings. Now let's fast forward to what we've seen with the Arab Spring in 2011. The unrest pushed so desperately by the US government and the military-industrial complex, the puppet governments. The destruction of once stable economies, the expansion of central banking worldwide, the seizing of gold from dictatorships the US had no business in, the vast impoverished populaces divided by the US empire, the military bases built, the false flag attacks. The CIA literally used the Muslim Brotherhood and the Sunnis in 2011 during and after the Arab Spring. In the section titled Implications for the United States, the document states that the most ideal situation for the US would be to see the Assad government overthrown and replaced by a Sunni regime controlled by business-oriented moderates. So basically a Muslim Brotherhood coup against the Syrian government. The CIA and the US government went ahead with the implementation of their plans in 2011, which resulted in over 400,000 deaths in Syria over 7 years. Of course, blamed on Assad for not, quote-unquote, cooperating with US, quote-unquote, democracy. Now, during the 2016 presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton called for a no-fly zone over Syria, which would have ended with Russian planes being shot down by the US. That would no doubt lead to a World War III, as top generals have warned. Well, under the Trump administration, former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson argued early last year against overthrowing Assad, saying it wasn't on the agenda and that working with Assad could even be possible in overthrowing ISIS, which has gripped the country under the guise of the Muslim Brotherhood with arms from the West. Well, within days of Tillerson's tame call for peace between Assad and the US, the establishment wants us to believe that Assad, for no reason at all, gassed his own people, mainly children, and basically shot himself in the foot, begging for an attack by an emotionally triggered United States and the global military-industrial complex. We're supposed to believe that Assad is let off the hook and then, with no personal or national benefit, used sarin gas on his own people. Something too absurd for a child to believe, never mind the vast brainwashed populace within the United States who eagerly called for an attack. Well, Trump followed the emotional lead and sent missiles flying into Syria, hitting the base with the alleged sarin gas, only for people to walk in plain clothes onto the base without being infected at all by the non-existent sarin gas within hours. A year later, Jim Mattis admitted there was no proof that Assad actually attacked his own people. Of course, this attack by the US led to massive continued instability with Russia. Tillerson even said he was considering the no-fly zone Hillary spoke of during that campaign. Russia has threatened to retaliate. China has recently said they are on Russia's side. There's a massive global coalition growing. More false flags are surely to come. Warhawk John Bolton is now advising the sponge himself, Donald Trump, on national security. The same guy who has repeatedly called for preemptive attacks against Iran, North Korea, and Cuba. What I have just spoken of is the truth, with declassified, surely manipulated and sugar-coated documents by the CIA going back decades. Is it about time to stand up? Or shall we perish in apathy for the burnt ashes that used to be history books to show no one? Stay tuned as we continue to cover this issue. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, Wham? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized and censored by YouTube as the ADL comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. Also, check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also find us at steemit.com at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in Steem, the cryptocurrency. And also find us at the Red Pill Expo, which we have a reference link for below in the description and the comments as well. Hosted by G. Edward Griffin, amazing speakers coming out to speak this year. Don't miss it. It's in Spokane, Washington, June 21st to 23rd. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.